Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you to Antonio. I just want to check, is my presentation visible and in presenter mode?
It sure is.
Okay. Oh, I forgot to share my audio. Let me just start with that. Let me see, where am I? Okay. I just want to make sure, okay, the audio is shared. And excuse me, just for a little bit. Okay. And so thank you very much. And as you stated, my presentation is on reaching out to mass media with your policy brief. I'll be specifically looking at television, but obviously mass media also applies to radio and print, although they have slightly different approaches. So I'm Sisanda Nkwala. I'm a journalism lecturer at CPUT. I am also a researcher, and my fields of interests are in rhetoric studies, in media, and in language. I am a former journalist, having worked for the SABC and community media for about 10 years. And then also awaiting graduation, just finished my PhD, and graduation is set to happen in July, so I'm really excited about that. Today in my address, I'm going to really be speaking as a former journalist, but also as somebody who now is a researcher and often attempts to get into mass media with some of the research that I'm doing. It's not policy briefs, but it is research that I try to disseminate because I think it is relevant to the public. So I'll speak on both those aspects, which I hope you'll find useful. So I'll start by just talking about media and mass media in particular, and then I'll play a video around a story that I did where it was an NGO trying to advocate around a particular policy. I'll then discuss this concept of media logic, which helps us understand how different mediums work and how we can then tailor our approach to the medium so that our message lands well and gets as far as it possibly can. I'll talk about some of the nuts and bolts about who to reach out to with policy briefs when it comes to mass media, the when and the where as well, and also the what element. So when we talk about media and mass media in particular, we're talking about two aspects. There's the industry, so the people and the companies that create media products. And then there are the technologies, the software or the platforms like television and radio that are then used to transmit that information or entertainment between senders and receivers across space and time. And why this is important for one to understand is that you need to tailor your message to both. You need to try and reach the industry, which are the people, and a technique to that, but also you need to bear in mind the technology that is being used to disseminate the message, because depending on the technology, one's approach will be different. A 2021 study by Reuters and Oxford University put the fact that around most people are accessing news online. Now, I think this is obviously a specific demographic. We are mindful of data issues and network coverage issues that mean that a lot of South Africans still can't participate virtually in news consumption. But this particular sample, 90% were either online or in social media. TV were about 2 out of 3, and then print was less than 50%. And why I bring this up is because the media ecosystem, as you can see, doesn't have one dominant player and the rest lagging behind. Reaching out, even if you're using mass media, you cannot forget about social media. Similarly, if you decide you're a social media person, you can't forget about mass media, because these two are these media formats are interlinked nowadays. And just to also define, mass media really is the traditional media, radio, TV, and print. And when we talk about social media, we're talking about media that we mainly use on our phones. So whether it's WhatsApp or Twitter or Facebook, and that's really more about socializing. So this clip that I'm going to play with you, I played for for a particular NGO that is trying to advocate for a law. Hello?
Sisanda, we lost you for a couple of seconds there. You broke up, so perhaps if you can just step back 3 steps and then continue.
Sisanda, I don't know if you can hear me, but maybe you need to try and stop the screen sharing and connect again, but maybe without the video. And may not be possible to play the video clip because I think there's a bandwidth problem.
Colleagues, yes, it seems like we have now lost Sisanda. Hopefully she will reconnect and possibly with a better connection this time around. Kuniswang, welcome. I see you've managed to join us.
Yes,
apologies for that. I'm not sure, my Chrome just crashed.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, can I check, did you hear, did I stop where I'm presenting the video?
You started introducing the video, but we didn't
Okay.
actually get the context of the video. So if you could perhaps just give us a quick intro to the actual video as well. Thanks.
Okay,
Sisanda.
great. So the video that I'm going to share is a news report that I filed based on a particular NGO that was trying to get a law changed around babies who are born still, and the fact that parents cannot bury those fetuses. It's more about advocacy, but some of the principles that one would apply when writing an advocacy-orientated policy brief will come through in this. So let me change this to presenter mode. Okay. I just want to check that I'm sharing the audio on my system.
Unborn baby has approached the High Court in Pretoria. This to amend a law that currently denies parents of stillborn children or miscarried babies the right to bury or cremate them if they're 26 weeks or younger. In a court application launched earlier this month, the organisation says that the law does not give parents the right to decide on what to do with the remains of the fetus, but instead incinerates the prospective baby as medical waste.
When Lorica Steenkamp found out she was pregnant with twins, she was overjoyed. Little did she know, however, that 23 weeks into the pregnancy, she would be dealt a double blow. Her twin girls were stillborn, and over and above that, she was denied the right to bury them.
It took me a year to get enough courage to go back to the hospital and asked one of the social workers there what happened to them, what did they do with them. And she said, please come back next week. And I went back and she very unceremoniously told me that they were incinerated as medical waste.
The trauma of the loss and the fact that she was denied the opportunity to get closure through a ceremony of some form sent her over the edge.
Having a kind of ceremony or something to find closure is really, really essential. You can, like I do, pretend it never happened and try and continue with your life, but somewhere along the line that will catch up to you.
Recognizing the intense grief that the loss of a baby at any stage of a pregnancy can cause, the NGO, The Voice of the Unborn Baby, launched an application to have the law changed.
We are saying that not having the choice to elect, to bury what you perceive as your prospective child, born still under the age of 26 weeks of gestation, is an infringement of your basic human rights.
The application will be heard in June. It's hoped that soon the law will be changed to allow all grieving parents the right to find closure in whichever way they choose. Sisanda Nkwala, SABC News, Cape Town.
Okay, so here with this clip, I want to talk about a concept called media logic that can guide how you package your policy brief so that it lands well. And I'll use television as a case study. Each medium has its own logic. Print has its own logic, social media has its own logic, and it's something that as a communicator you come to understand, but the principles that I'm going to speak about in relation to television can be applied to other media formats. So the first one is understanding the fact that television is a metonymic text, which means that TV, if you want your policy brief to be featured on that platform, takes complex issues and really brings it down to a case. So if you're dealing with laws around smoking or climate change or something big, for it to make sense on television, it must be brought down to a case. And case studies where you take a particular instance or a particular person or a particular context and you flesh that out, really land well for this medium. So in this case, it's this issue of parents who are not allowed to take the remains of their fetuses and bury them, a big issue that is quite abstract, but told through the story of this woman, then becomes something that a viewer can relate to. The second is understanding that television news is a form of entertainment. And I think even radio, this would be the case. So when you package your brief, people will watch it as a story on TV or listen to it as a story on radio.
Okay, can we, instead of 5, I think 5 is a bit late. Can you please put him for 4?
Excuse me?
Then I can ask him to...
Hello?
Ask.
Okay. So TV is entertainment, which means in how you write it, or package it for the media professional. It must have a beginning. What is the problem? A middle, what are you proposing? And an end, what is the resolution? Because that is how this particular medium tells its stories. The third aspect is the fact that it's an audiovisual medium. And I think Antonio in his examples of how you can take a concept or a policy brief and make it visual was a great lead into my presentation. You can't go to television with just text. Even if it's a brilliant brief, it cannot land on this medium if it doesn't have visuals accompanying it. And I think for researchers, it's important, even as you collect your data, take pictures, make videos, or if you can, create infographics that can then be broadcast as part of the brief, should it be a story that a journalist wants to follow on. And then lastly, think about when the brief will be best received, because TV, we watch it at particular times and in particular ways. And if you're going to air it in the middle of an intense political season, it's not likely to be picked up. But when things are quieter and there's a little more room for journalists to pick up on softer stories, so to speak, then your brief may get traction. So this is how we grew up, watching or consuming news. There would be the TV where all of us are watching. And the model for this is, if you want your products or your policy briefs featured, you, the science communicator, would send a press release, email, or make a telephone call to a journalist who would then disseminate it through these different media platforms. Nowadays, we are not only consuming media at different places and in different through different technologies, we are also creating media. And so the media ecosystem looks very complex like this, where you've got social media in the middle. And if you, the science communicator, sends information to social media, the journalist can pick it up and then get in touch with you to follow up, and then it ends up on mainstream media. So in terms of who to approach from mainstream media, my advice is that you need to be consuming mainstream media. So watch television news, watch radio, listen to the radio, so that you know what journalist does what kind of story. And then you can follow those journalists on social media as well to get a sense of what they focus on. If you pitch your policy brief around a legal issue to a journalist that does political news, it's not likely to land well. But if you find a synergy between what the journalist is already doing, their beat and their focus, and you craft your brief to present to them with that in mind, it is something that they're most likely going to pick up. So what I did in my capacity as a researcher, I wrote an article recently on news coverage of court cases that involve violence against children. And I felt that Thembekile would be a great person to do an interview with me on it. I didn't know him before I reached out to him, but I've been following his work on social media. So it's as simple as sending him a DM, a direct message on Twitter, where you tell the person about your brief very briefly, and then why now? So for me, it was 16 days of activism coming up, and then I gave him my credentials so that he knows I'm a little bit credible. And then we did eventually end up having a conversation on TV. So you see here, social media feeding into mainstream media because the media ecosystem has changed. When and where? I always say for things like policy briefs, weekends are really great for those stories because they are calmer. There isn't a lot of court going on, a lot of crime, maybe not crime, but politics. And if you pitch your story on a Thursday or even a Friday to a journalist, they are most likely going to pick it up for the weekend as opposed to a weekday story. Ask yourself, why now? So if you're going to be doing something on climate change is an ongoing issue. Why would a journalist want to cover it now? If in your brief you can bring about the timing factor as why it's urgent, then that will prompt them to consider it. And then think about why you want to engage in a particular platform and what the best platform for doing that is. So you'll see, this is a very rough graph that I've done, where I look at the ease with which you, an individual researcher, can share content. And then on my x-axis is the ease with which your content will reach a large audience. So if you look at something like TV or radio, which is right here at the bottom, it's very difficult for you to go directly to a TV channel and share your content. But if it manages to land up there, it will reach a large audience. A platform like a personal blog, very easy for you to share content with, but unless you've got millions of followers, it's not likely to reach a large audience. So, and sometimes you don't want your thing to reach a large audience. You want to engage with a particular community and get mobilization there. So the platforms do different things, and it's about you having clarity for yourself. What do I want to achieve by sharing this particular policy brief and then deciding on the platform to use? So here, I wanted to share an article that I wrote, and I reached out to Luke Corner from Power FM, someone I also didn't know, to tell him about the book chapter. And once the chapter was, once the interview happened, I then shared a link to the chapter so that people who had listened or people who follow him and Power FM could then go and read the study. So my intention wasn't the interview as much as it was to get people to read the particular study that I wrote. So the second to last point that I want to make is that in South Africa, we have got various mass media channels. And I think we focus a lot on our SABC and ENCA platforms, but community media is a really strategic place to get communities mobilized around policy. So don't overlook your local radio station and a TV channel like Cape Town TV if you are based in Cape Town. Being on TV is no longer the goal. As I've shown, different platforms do different things. So it's about having clarity. What do you want to achieve? And then going about that, and then decide on why you want to engage, and I've said find the best platform for that. So if you, thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you. And if you'd like to chat a bit further, here are my details. Otherwise, I'm open to questions if there's time.